pleasure matters. That's the topic of today's Instagram live with Rosalean Batool. Hopefully he's going to be joining us. Rosalean is a transformational coach, a high performance business coach, specializing in mindset and wealth. So we're going to be having a conversation, hopefully when she joins, about female pleasure, the importance of female pleasure, especially in regards to Muslim women. Speaking about her career, where she has a number of female entrepreneurs and Muslim women as a client. Some of them are authors, some of them are public speakers, motivational speakers, and everyday women. And we're going to have an interesting chat, a mature chat about the importance of sexual pleasure, why sexual pleasure matters. I think Rosaline's here, so I can add her. So it should be for grown folks only, this conversation. I've received a number of your emails. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, Habib. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Can you hear me well? Is the connection okay? I've been stressing about the connection the whole day because I'm in the Gambia, so the internet is a bit laggy here.
No, the connection is perfect. I can hear you like crystal clear, as if you was like across the road. So that's great.
Great.
And how is it over in the Gambia?
Oh my God.
Family.
It's amazing. Alhamdulillah. I love it here. Feels like home.
Really? I've never been, but I've heard so many great things. Everyone tells me about the Gambia. That it's like it's a paradise on earth.
It literally is. Alhamdulillah, the people are so calm here. It's so relaxing here. There's like no rush. Everyone's just chilling. Everyone's so helpful. It's really an amazing place, especially the beach. Oh my God, the beaches are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of Gambian friends, and they're very laid back and very different to what I'm used to being in Nigeria, and especially Lagos. It's all about hustling and the hustle and bustle of Lagos. So,
my husband's the same. My husband's from Lagos, so he's the same. He has that hustle mentality. I'm just like, relax, just chill.
It's not even about 24/7. It's 25/8. You always have to. You have to hustle 24 because it's just the nature of. I mean, even though I was born in the UK, but obviously of Nigerian parents and going back a few times. It's the mindset is always you need to kind of be creative with the little that you've got, because everyone's kind of competing with each other. And
exactly.
But when I go to different African countries or speak to African from obviously outside of Nigeria, it's quite interesting to see the difference in attitude. It's very different to like what I'm used to with people from Lagos.
Right. I know with my husband, because I'm so like spontaneous and laid back, and he's a planner. I know it annoys him so much. Like he has to plan every single move. I'm just like, let's just go with the flow. It's fine. We'll figure it out. He's like, no, we have to plan for this, this, and this. I'm like, okay, cool. That's just you. Let's just go with it.
Every eventuality. Now, just before we get into the topic at hand, you're quite popular because when I posted that, I don't know if you've got like a legion of people that as soon as I said I was going to have this conversation with you, I was getting so many messages, people asking me, oh, ask her this, ask her that. And I was like, and these are people that don't follow me. So I'm just wondering, I can see they follow you. And I don't know if maybe it's difficult to get to book a session with you or anything like that. And I think some people thought this was going to be like a therapy session and they wanted to use me to ask some questions. And I was like, no, if you want like that, your own kind of therapy session, I'm sure you can book her. We're just going to have like a frank conversation about a topic that's really important, but in terms of your personal issues, we might address some of them, generally speaking, but please, I'd also advising people just go straight to you and don't use me as a vessel. So that was quite, and then there was a couple of, some people were shocked and surprised, and which will play into the importance of this topic, that like people kind of were shocked that a Muslim woman or a woman that's wearing a niqab can actually speak about sex and intimacy, and it's like how outrageous. So for those people, if any of you are listening, this conversation is probably not for you, but if you're still listening, then clearly maybe there's something that you want to kind of benefit from it. But anyway, after that, just can you, I briefly introduced you, but do you mind giving like a quick elevator pitch to talk a little bit about, to introduce who you are and the work that you do as a transformational coach?
Yeah, so I'm the creator of Abundance Rewiring, and it helps women, successful entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs, tap into their orgasmic feminine energy so that they can conquer burnout, procrastination, perfectionism, and add $20,000 to $30,000 to their business. So what I do with abundance rewiring is I help find the root cause of why. Let's say, for example, you're a perfectionist. You weren't born a perfectionist, you weren't born a procrastinator, you weren't born lazy, but there's always a root belief in your subconscious mind which says that you're not good enough. So I help you go back to the memory that's attached to that belief, which is usually in childhood, or it could be ancestral, especially if you're a person of color or a woman of color, that you have tons of like trauma from slavery, from racism, from witch hunts, from patriarchy, from unhealthy beauty standards. So this has been passed down to us in our DNA. So I help you locate the memory and then uproot the belief and then release the suppressed emotions. Because trauma is not about how painful it was. It's about you suppressing certain emotions, that where you feel like, oh, I can't express how I feel. So you release those suppressed emotions, and then I help you install more powerful beliefs, such as you are good enough, you're worth it all, you can have it all, you can have the money, the amazing marriage, you can have an amazing relationship with God, as well as being rich. And these are the beliefs that I help you install through abundance rewiring.
Lovely. And you said a couple of points which I picked up on, about the whole, a number of women wanting to be perfectionists. Can you elaborate a bit on that? And the reason why I'm saying is because I always, many times when I'm receiving messages from women, it's always, especially in the complaint in relation to like sex or intimacy, it's always kind of comes down to whether am I good enough, am I normal, and it's always like kind of comparing to other people, and then it's like people have got this standard, women have got this certain standard that they need to attain, and again, like you said, especially with some of the beauty standards and things like that. But where does this perfectionist ideal come from, and why is it a lot of women seem to have trouble with this?
Yeah, so from my work and the work that I do with clients, usually what I find is in childhood, they were always taught to be better than everyone. So whether it's getting a better grade or looking the most prettiest, because that was like maybe the parents were like, oh, you're so fair, your hair is so nice, you should always keep it, you should always look good. Because if you don't look good, then something bad will happen to you. That's the exact script that goes on in their minds. And then what happens is, because they have that fear of disappointing their parents, because remember, our role models as children was our parents, so we carry their blueprints. We don't have any other, it's like we're born and like with a blank canvas, and our parents paint different beliefs on us. So if your parents were like very harsh on you and wanted you to get the best grades, they wanted you to be the most talented. I know a lot of gifted children who have tons of trauma. I don't know if you like heard of gifted children, especially when you had like a gift in school and you were put into a gifted program. You have tons of trauma around being perfect, because if you get things wrong in your mind, you believe that you're not good enough. That, oh my God, I'm such a failure. Even if you get a B on your test and maybe your parents reprimanded you, you told yourself, I'm such a failure. I'm not good enough, because my mom and my dad's reaction to that B, C, or D, whatever it was. So it always goes back to childhood. What I've noticed is that a lot of, and another thing is, if you were raised around success and you saw your parents arguing about over money, or they didn't really have a healthy relationship, you have this within you that you have to get things right so that you don't go through what your parents went through. There's so many variables to it, but it's always how you saw your parents. It's always the relationship that you had with your parents.
Understood. Yeah, understood. And I mean, yeah, that plays into, I forgot the name of the person that gave this TED talk, but she was speaking about how a lot of women have been socially conditioned to be perfect, like perfectionists, whereas men were socially conditioned to be courageous. And the difference in terms of that mindset is that when you're conditioned to be courageous, you can be a flawed individual, you can make mistakes, and your sense of achievement lies in the fact that you've overcome these flaws to achieve whatever success that you achieve. Whereas the problem is, if you've got the mindset that you always need to be perfect, like you're a perfectionist, and that becomes your standard, not your goal, even if you attain some form of perfection, that's just your standard, and obviously there's nothing beyond perfection, and so that's why a lot of women or a lot of people have got this perfectionist mindset, always be trying to seek this perfection that's unattainable. And even if they do find it in some sphere of their life, there's always going to be like a backdrop where obviously they're not going to be perfect for a while, and they're always going to try and get that, and that's the standard rather than the goal. And another person that I was speaking to, they were just saying that if they made these kind of perfection standards or perfection goals as the goal rather than the standard, then it might alleviate some of the mental issues that maybe some people are going through, where they think they need to attain X, Y, and Z, like to be the perfect mother, perfect wife, perfect in the bedroom, perfect in the court. And the reason why I'm saying is that when I speak to a number of men, it's not that people want to be the perfect lovers; they just want to be the better lover, or they want to be the best. And it's quite different. And that's why when I do workshops or webinars, I prefer to do it either with men or just with women, just because even the language, how I'll communicate, be very different. If I'm speaking to men, it's going to be, some people might find it problematic, but that's the messaging a lot of men, I think, resonate with. It's quite goal orientated. They want to know how I can achieve X, Y, and Z. Whereas with women, it's maybe more holistic and even from a place of healing, or for them to feel that they are enough and things like that, which is very different. If I was going to use that type of language with men, they'll be like, that's not what we're seeking. We want to be, you know, so it's just quite an interesting dynamic that when having these type of conversations, especially when we are going to get into sex and intimacy and pleasure, but just understanding like the framework is quite interesting, especially when you're speaking to generally like the two genders and how we kind of view things. But yeah, that was also just for the benefit of, again, I'm thinking for people who maybe are not familiar with some of the terms you've used. Do you mind defining or explaining what is trauma?
Okay, trauma. So for me, what I define as trauma is simply a suppressed emotion that was created from a disempowering or a negative event. It doesn't have to be something really like sexual abuse. It doesn't have to be like something really painful. It could be something as simple as your mom or dad picking you up late from school. And I actually had a client like this, and this is why she became a perfectionist. So her mom picked her up late from school, and in her mind, she thought that her mom didn't love her anymore, or that her mom didn't think that she was good enough, or she wasn't important enough to be remembered. So what she did is she started creating routines in her life where she would always feel important and always feel remembered. And that's what created the perfectionism within her. So it doesn't have to be something massively traumatic. It can be something as small as that. And that creates like a disempowering belief in your mind that I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'll never have what I want, money is unavailable. These are all the disempowering beliefs that I've seen in my practice that a lot of people have, as well as I'm not good enough, so what's the point of even trying? That's a very big one, especially right now because of lockdown. I've worked with a lot of people who said that, what's the point of trying, because there's no certainty that we're going to come out of lockdown. There's no certainty that life is going to return back to normal. So what's the point of me even trying? So these beliefs stop you from living a life that's fulfilling. And that's why you fall into perfectionism, procrastination. That's why when you suppress those emotions around the trauma, that's when you start holding yourself back and you create negative or disempowering habits. That's what I like to call it. And I like to call it bad habits. I like to call it disempowering habits, because you are an empowered person. Allah created you empowered. But what happens is you have these beliefs and these thoughts in your mind that disempower you.
I like that, and I like your choice of words, and I think that's also very important. Like rather using like bad habits, disempowered, and letting people know that obviously by the will of Allah we are all empowered. I think this victim mindset, unfortunately, that some people suffer from, is what is actually preventing a lot of people from healing or overcoming some of the obstacles or challenges that they're facing. And even that, like I said, by the choice of words and even saying things like disempower, that no, you've got the power to overcome all of these issues, but you just need to recognize that and take ownership of that. So it's putting the power in that person's hands rather than waiting for outside forces to kind of like empower them. So I like your approach in terms of the use of language and intentionally using the language from disempowering as opposed to kind of saying bad habits and things like that. Now that moves us on to what we want to talk about today. What is the connection, if there is any, or why are we speaking about, why does female pleasure matter, especially in the realm of the type of work that you do?
So you know how you mentioned that women like to feel good enough and they have that different connection? For women, if they're not living a life that turns them on, it takes them down the road of depression, anxiety, PTSD, like they have no mojo in their lives. So, you know, Allah talks about the womb a lot. In the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ talks about it as well. The womb is where we create from, and as women, that's a very powerful energy to have. I don't know if you've read the book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and he talks about the sexual energy and how to use it as a charge to become more creative. As women, especially, we have that creative energy within us, even if we don't have sex. We already have it in us. All we have to do is tap into it. And we have to do something called womb clearing, where we release the shame. So a lot of us women, we have tons of shame stuck in our bodies, whether it's in our voice, in our wombs, or we have guilt in our heart. And that really stops us from living a life that is full of pleasure, full of happiness, full of joy. It doesn't have, a lot of us think that, oh, money is going to make me happy, and it doesn't, right? Or we think that, oh, if once I become this successful, or I get on the front cover of a magazine, I'm going to feel so happy. This is what women think. But deep down inside, it's not that. It's that you want the validation. And the only way that you can get validated is when you release those that painful traumas that you have within you, release the shame. And that's when you stop seeking external validation and you start validating yourself. Because it's all about going inwards rather than outwards. So once you go inwards and you're able to reparent yourself and look within yourself and think, okay, what do I really need right now? Because when you have shame, it's like you're looking outwards, like, okay, what can I do to fill me up? Because whatever I'm feeling right now, I don't like it. So let me go and make the money. Let me go and, be in this relationship. Let me go and, wear the clothes or get the attention, and it's not filling you up. The reason why is because you have that shame within you. Once you uproot it, get rid of it, and you start tapping deeply into your intuition and into your orgasmic energy, then you start feeling, okay, I don't need no one. I could be alone right now, and I won't need anyone. I will still be happy. That's the essence of pleasure.
Mhm. No, that's very well said. And with women who are in like marital relations, like women that are married but are unfulfilled, I'm sure you do as well, but I get a number of messages from both
Yeah.
men and women who are in sexless or unfulfilled marriages where the man is complaining because his wife doesn't feel fulfilled or she's never experienced an orgasm. Similarly, women are complaining about that or not being able to communicate with their husband, or they feel disconnected and they feel like sex is more of a chore or duty that they're doing to serve the man rather than something that they enjoy or they're supposed to enjoy. What advice would you give? I know there was a lot that I kind of mentioned, but what advice, if we start with women who are married but unfulfilled, but do not know how to communicate with their husbands, that they've never basically had an orgasm before? What advice or what approach would you give to such?
Okay. The first thing I want to do is release the shame around sex, because a lot of women, you have the shame around saying, I want sex. A lot of women will not tell their husband. And you know what? I'll be honest, women are hornier than men. As much as like people say men are hornier, no. Women, especially if you're a high achieving woman and you're very ambitious, you feel the need to have an orgasm more than men. Okay, that's number one. You have to admit it to yourself that you want to have sex. Number two, you have to realize that sex is not for men, it's for you. Allah says in the Quran, after, I don't know what ayah is, but it's about the fasting. So after you fasted, go to your woman, go to your garden. Allah talks about the woman like a garden, and have sex with her. Why? Because when she receives the energy, what happens to a garden? When you water it, when when the sun shines on the garden, what happens? The flowers bloom, they blossom. So when a woman has sex, there's something that happens. It's like an energy exchange. The man obviously gets his fulfillment, but the woman, she gets more creative. When she feels when she has that orgasm, she releases so much stress, releases all that the stress that she's holding on throughout the day, and she releases those good feel good hormones like endorphins, oxytocin. She releases a bit of adrenaline, and that's what gets a woman feeling good again. So ladies, remember, sex is not for men, and we have this in our minds, especially in the West. We have it in our minds that I'm going to punish my husband if he wants to have sex with me. Let me punish him by withdrawing sex. You're only doing yourself a disservice, because you will get more sexually frustrated than the man. And I know so many women be like, no, that's not me. No, it's true. I've spoken to so many women, and they always say to me, I really want to have sex with my husband, but I don't want to be too forthright. I don't want to be too out there. I don't want him to think that I'm desperate. I don't want him to think that's my weakness. It will never be your weakness. Sex is always a man's weakness. For you, it's your place to feel empowered. It's your place to tap into your creative energy.
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially looking at in many modern cultures or Western cultures, or even especially Muslim cultures, how people view sex and women's pleasure and desire. That this idea that it's always men that want sex and men are more desirous, when a lot of medieval, ancient Arab and cultures, it was actually the opposite. And that just reminds me of there's an Islamic tradition which is reported by a number of the Muslim writers and scholars, where it says that when Allah created sexual desire, he created it into, one tradition said he created it into 100 parts. 99 of those parts he gave to women and one part he gave to men. And they made reference to that to say, and then it says, but Allah placed shyness in women, an innate form of shyness in women that prevents them from not acting like the way men act when they kind of see someone that they're aroused by. But the underlying message of that particular tradition was to say that women's capacity for sexual desire and sexual pleasure is far greater than men if they're able to tap into that. And that's something that, again, this was understood by a lot of the, in our own tradition as well. And there's also similar traditions in amongst ancient Indians. But the fact that this was understood by a lot of the Muslims of the past, and it was seen as, yes, sex was for both the man and the woman. It wasn't just for the man to get off, and women were entitled to pleasure. And obviously in the bedroom, there's no concept of like haya or modesty or shame, because obviously they're both allowed to disclose their bodily parts and enjoy one another. They didn't have this concept that I think many Muslims are suffering from today, and like, how do I initiate sex, especially as a woman? Am I going to be seen as loose or immodest? So it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting, the views that people have, and they use the religion to justify that, no, I want to be modest and chaste, even when they're with their husband, and it's just like, no, you're using it in the wrong context. So I think there's a lot of there's a lot of unlearning that I think that needs to be done. And even just having a conversation, like us having a conversation, I've had ridiculous messages, people saying, this is your, and I'm like, we're not even in the same room. And it's just like, again, half of the message, I don't entertain them, to be honest with you, but it just shows that a lot of people have a lot of unlearning to do. And I'm speaking about adults. We tend to speak about sex education for children and kids. I think a lot of adults need sex education, arguably just as much, if not more, than children, because there's a lot of unlearning that people need to do. Not only people go on about porn a lot, but also just the mixed messaging or the false messaging people have heard from their culture, or even unfortunately from some religious figures, in terms of what is kind of considered acceptable or appropriate. And again, it differed from culture to culture. So I'm fully well aware that some people are really uncomfortable with this topic, or some women are uncomfortable to initiate sex in the bedroom. If that works for you and that's your husband's got that understanding, fine, but that doesn't necessarily work for everyone. But I think it's important that women take ownership of their sensuality and feel entitled to like initiate sex, like you said. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Also, yeah, so I remember one of your posts, you mentioned something along the lines of that a number of your clients that you have talk about being high performing in the business world, or like, whether it's entrepreneurs or business women, but really dissatisfied in the bedroom. Is that something that you commonly experience? And the reason I'm asking that is because you mentioned that a lot of successful women are the most libidious, like the most horny. So why is it then they don't have an issue in the bedroom?
So basically, this is what happens. When you're a woman and you're running a successful business, you're always in your masculine energy. What happens is when you're in your masculine hustle, go get to hustle, and then you come home, you have to switch it. And you have to now go be the soft woman, the gentle woman, the woman who's open to receiving, but it's difficult. That becomes an imbalance. And the reason why that happens is, again, because of traumas. A woman believes that if I be too soft with my husband while I'm running this business, he's going to take the mick out of me. He's going to abuse me. He's going to take my money, and I'm going to be, I'm going to look like an idiot. I'm going to look terrible in front of the world. So they have these beliefs within them. So they have that guard up with their husbands. So it's like having two men in a home, they're clashing. So they are horny. Like, I've spoken to so many women. Someone asked, I remember having a client, she said to me, I've not had sex with my husband for 10 years. I was like, are you okay? The first thing I had to ask is, are you okay? With her husband. For 10, she goes, no. She goes, we had it once a year. But she goes, other than that, I don't want it. That was her saying to her, I don't want it. And I said, are you sure about that? Are you really sure you don't want it? She goes, okay, I'm going to admit it. I do want it, but I just don't know how to tell him without lowering my defenses, without saying to him that I want it. Because I'm used to being the leader in my business. I'm used to being the person that everyone comes to. So I have to go to him for sex. That was the issue. She didn't want to lower her defenses. She didn't want to lower her, her guard. She wanted to still be a leader in the home, but it was like head on. It was like a clash. So after our session, I actually got to the root cause of it. And, subhanAllah, she had tons of like abuse, like sexual abuse in childhood. And she used those memories stopped her from opening up to her husband. It really, like, literally put a guard up in front of her husband. She couldn't even, like, she couldn't communicate with him. It literally was impossible to communicate with him. But after the session, alhamdulillah, she had her first orgasm. And she was married to this guy for 20 years. And they were on the brink of divorce. And she had her first orgasm with him. And she was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I've experienced that. In all the 20 years of being married, I experienced that with him. And I went to him and I asked for it. And he was happy to give it to me. So it's just like I mentioned before, it's a trauma. There's always a trauma behind it. There's always a belief that if I give up, if I ask for help, it's not going to happen. If I ask for help, I'm not going to get it. So I might as well do it myself. Or I might as well just, remain silent, not communicate my needs, because it's never going to be answered. No one's ever going to come to my rescue. So just rewind those subconscious beliefs is very important, especially with women who are running businesses. And it's also about balancing the masculine and the feminine energy. So masculine and feminine energy is not about being a man or a woman. Sometimes when you're running a business, you are in your masculine energy. But let's say when you're relaxing, when you're in flow, you're in your feminine energy. These are two energies that we have. But usually what happens is women are so stuck in their masculine energy, they don't know how to change it and switch it when they're with their husbands. And when you switch that the marriage is amazing. The sex is amazing.
And is this something that a lot of women that come to you initially that might have, like the woman you mentioned, underlying issues? Are they conscious of it in the beginning? Or is it,
No, actually, they come to me about money blocks. And I've always noticed the connection between money and orgasms. I don't know why, but so they come to me for money blocks and I help, release those money blocks. But then straight away they end up having a better sex life. There's always a connection. I don't know what the connection is, but I feel like for women, when they are able to receive and they open themselves up to receiving, that's when more money comes their way. That's when more pleasure comes their way, because now they open the doors of receiving. Because usually we're so guarded. We're like, no, I'll do it all myself. I don't need no help. I'm an independent, strong woman. I'm a boss. Yada, yada, yada. This is who I am. So when you have that strong defense up, you block all forms of abundance. That's why also the women I work with, they have health issues because they're blocking any form of abundance coming their way. So once you release those blocks, it's like, now I can receive. I'm open to getting help. I'm open to receiving help. I'm open to receiving pleasure. And that's what the difference is.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I think that's also the case with a number of men as well, that especially a lot of men, or even people in general, that's really angry. Like you see even on Twitter and these trolls, and there's people that's angry with the world. A lot of it does stem from like sexual frustration or sexual dissatisfaction. A lot of it does stem from whether they're not in a relationship they want to be in, or they're in a relationship and they're dissatisfied, or they're not happy. And a lot of it does emanate or stem from, I've noticed that with sexual dysfunction, and there's been some studies that have been carried out by, that's demonstrated this with a number of like these incels, which is getting quite popular. A lot of men who are, what does it stand for? Involuntary. They're men that are celibate, but they don't want to be celibate. So they just go out and attack women, like verbally. You find this a lot. And you do have this a lot, and even in the Muslim community, is that we'll always be constantly trying to police women's dress, and you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Where's your husband, like, and stuff like that. And a lot of them are sexually repressed and sexually frustrated. You can see that a lot. So yeah, I do agree that a lot of these mental blocks or these issues, whether it's money or dissatisfaction in life, a lot of it does come from sexual dissatisfaction. So that's quite an interesting insight in that. Also, I wanted to ask you about, because I was doing some Googling of you, and I thought you speak about the RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy. Is that linked to what you're doing? I mean, with the
I studied RTT, and that was amazing. But then I created something that's a bit more powerful than RTT. So RTT helped you heal from childhood traumas. But what I noticed was the gap was that it doesn't help you connect with your future self. So when we set goals and we're trying to achieve goals, it's always because we're trying to reach a future self or a future identity. So what I do with abundance rewiring is actually help you connect with your future self. And it's a very powerful thing. Because once you start feeling like your future self and you start thinking like your future self, that's when you're able to make moves and, move forward in your life rather than keep going backwards.
Right. Okay, good. I'm glad you clarified that. And with some of the sessions you do, is it one-to-one or do you hold like webinars? Like I'm thinking, how do you Because I'm thinking, especially if someone knows that they have an issue in terms of like sexual frustration or dissatisfaction, but they're scared to kind of say it from the outset. How do you bring it out them? Do they need to have like a one-to-one session, or do you have like webinars you give like examples like we gave earlier, and they can maybe connect to it? I'm just wondering for
Yeah,
people.
so this is what I do. Usually, it depends. So let's say a person comes to me and they say to me, you know what, I have this challenge. Maybe they say to me, I'm procrastinating, or you know, I want to expand my business, but I'm afraid. And then I get on a 60-minute call with them. It's a free call, and I find out what's exactly going on with them. And then I offer them my service. So if it's like really deep traumas, like maybe they have like tons of sexual abuse, or maybe there's lots of traumas from childhood, then I would offer them one-on-one, because I like working one-on-one with people who have deeper traumas. If it's like with someone who already knows about mindset, and they already know like they read books and they watch YouTube and they just want to accelerate their growth, then I offer them my 6-month mastermind, which is Sacred Sensual Success, and it's for female entrepreneurs. And I help them tap into that orgasmic feminine pleasure so that they can build a business from abundance rather than scarcity. Or I have a webinar, my masterclasses, which gives a taster abundance rewiring session at the end. So that's the 3 ways I usually offer.
And where are they available? Just again for the benefit of people who want to check them
So
out.
if you go to my Instagram, it's in the link in the bio. I have it. So all the links are there. You can check it out. Or feel free to DM me. Usually people just DM me and I get on a call with them and see if like any of my services will help them. If they don't, I always have like a list of people who can help them. That's usually what I do. If I feel like my services can't help them, I refer them to other coaches who I know are trauma informed and they can get them results.
And you mentioned sexual abuse a couple of times. Is that something that's quite prevalent in like with the work you do with the clients?
Yeah, tons. Like there are tons, and because I'm through it myself, so I can already see it. When I speak to someone, I already know that they've been sexually abused. I can just feel it in their language and in their energy. So a lot of the women that I speak to have been through sexual traumas, whether it's rape, whether it's molestation, whether it's assault, or whether it's from childhood, like someone abused them sexually. But also recently, I've been having a lot of men come to me about sexual abuse, which is recent. I've actually had 3 or 4 clients that were sexually abused as children, like severely, and they were so afraid to share it. But alhamdulillah, after the session, like their lives changed. They were more confident, more open. But yeah, I feel like sexual abuse is like a really big thing, and I think there's a lot of shame around it. End of the day, you have to realize it's not your fault. It was never your fault. It's the perpetrator's fault. You're not the person who brought that on yourself. It was the perpetrator, the person who did it to you. And when you realize that, you take your power back. Because a lot of us, I remember having a client, and she said to me, "It's because I have red hair. That's the reason why I was sexually abused. If I didn't have red hair, then he wouldn't have touched me." So we hold this shame within us that it's my fault. If I was just a bit more cautious, if I didn't look so nice, then maybe that wouldn't have happened to me. But the key thing is to take your power back and realize that it's not your fault at all. That there's nothing that you could have done to have stopped it. It was never not your fault.
And for people who have this belief or this mindset that they believe that it's their fault, does that prevent them from experiencing pleasure? Okay.
Yes, definitely, especially in the bedroom. So when the women I speak to that have issues in the bedroom and they have issues with intimacy, that always plays in their mind. They always say to me, like women that I've spoken to that had severe sexual abuse as a child, they will always say to me, "I feel like I'm reliving it. So I don't want that memory to come back up. So I just avoid it." So it's very important to heal those memories and to release that suppressed emotion. It's usually anger. A lot of anger comes up in the session. That why did he do that to me? Why did he choose me and not someone else? So just releasing that anger really helps you open up your pleasure centers, and it helps you have a more deeper connection with your husband.
And what advice would you give to to men who their wife may have been abused or has been abused, and they're trying to navigate that? What advice, if any, would you do? Or do you offer sessions for men who to help?
Yeah, I do that as well. Actually, sometimes the man and the wife will come together, and I'll do a session on both of them. But the first thing I would say is learn your wife's love language. It's very important. Because sometimes what happens is, and this happens to me all the time with my husband's love language is acts of service, and my love language is quality time. So when he's doing things for me and not telling me things or spending time with me, I feel like he doesn't love me, right? So then, if I'm not helping him in certain areas, but I'm spending time with him, he will feel like I don't love him. So there's 5 types of love languages. It's words of affirmations, quality time, physical touch, gifts giving, and acts of service, I think. Yeah, that's 5. So finding out your partner's love language is very important so you can have a deeper connection with your partner. And especially if your wife has been abused, just learning what her love language is and you start showing her what she needs, she's going to feel more open to, sharing things with you.
Lovely. I am listening to you, by the way. I can multitask.
Yeah.
Not really good. I'm just trying to read some of the comments because there are some questions that people have asked. One of the questions is, do you offer any premarital services?
No, I don't. But if you're looking for premarital, you had Amira Zaki on recently as well. Amira Zaki is really good for that. She really helps you, like, get ready for, intimacy. So check out Amira Zaki. She's one of the women that I know that's really good at the premarital stage.
Okay. And some women cannot be open due to the shame and the way they've been brought up. I think, yeah, you covered that.
Yeah.
Is it wild to me you cannot talk to your spouse about what you want? Yeah, there's a number of messages where people either are amazed that some people can't speak to their partner, or they're thinking, how can I speak to my partner about pleasure? I'm getting like both sides where women are kind of either, why are women struggling to speak about intimacy and relationships with their other half? And then the other half is like, how can you go about it? So it's like 2 ends of the spectrum.
So what I would do is, like, slowly, with a man, you can't catch him off guard. If you catch him off guard, he's going to have his defenses up, right? So this is how you do it. You will have a conversation with him, have a dinner, cook some dinner for him, make the environment nice, maybe get a babysitter if you can, or, get someone to help with the children if you have children. Make the environment nice and safe. You have to remember this, guys, men don't want to feel like failures. So when it comes to sex especially, they do not want to feel like they failed in that area. So you can't come and say, you know what, I'm not sexually satisfied, give me what I need. Okay, you can't say it like that. You have to be, you have to invite them in. So you have to create a safe space with them. And, so that's what I'm saying, like, maybe a massage, give them a massage, make them feel really nice, get their defenses down, talk to them lovingly before you talk about the situation, because it's very sensitive, especially for men. Men want to feel like, that they've got it down in the bedroom. So if you're not doing that for them before the conversation, they're just going to be like, okay, I don't want to listen. Because remember, if a man feels like a failure, that's it. The conversation is over. Right?
No, you're definitely right with that. And I know some people don't like to say this. I mean, well, for a lot of men, we have a sexual ego, and I'm not saying it should be. For a lot of our sex is performative, as in we need to feel. Generally speaking, I'm not speaking on behalf of all men, just in case someone says not me. But generally, we need to feel that we've achieved or quote unquote accomplished something.
Yes.
And like what you said, that's why I think sometimes it can be quite delicate. It depends on the man, but if he feels that he's the one that has brought or helped you orgasm or made you ejaculate, he needs to feel that he's done the work, so to speak. And that's why sometimes if a woman's with that type of man, understand obviously his mindset, the way he is, the way she'll approach that type of man will be very different from a woman compared to a woman who's speaking to a man who's more open and happy to kind of, or see sex as more collaborative experience, that he wants to hear what she's got to say. And do you know what I mean? I think that's something that when I'm listening or coming across a number of people speaking about this type of topic, you have to consider the other person's the way they do things, and reaction as well. Because again, if it's something that you want to experience with him, as much as you might be very forthright, and that might work for you, if he doesn't take to that well, you're probably not going to get the end result that you want, which is again something that I've noticed a lot. Especially, I get a number of messages from women, particularly from a certain culture, which is very like, you don't really speak about sex, or they've been told that. Like, I'm not from, for example, from South Asian background. Right? I'm not from South Asia, and some of the messages I receive, and because obviously I'm not from that background, very difficult for me to understand even the minds of a number of the men. where women say that if I were to initiate any form of intimacy, he will think that I'm, like I mentioned earlier, loose, or where I got this information from. So even though she may be a virgin or sexually inexperienced, this idea that she has to go in there and not know anything. So if she's initiating any form of sexual interaction, he might perceive that to be she's been sleeping with someone else. Again, I don't really understand this, but I'm trying to understand, okay, the way that man thinks. Sorry?
Yeah, I've heard that as well, especially in the South Asian community. I've been around the South Asian for a long time, so I know. I'm Persian myself, but we kind of had that kind of stigma as well. So you know what you do in that situations when you are having sex with your husband, there's something that you do called the pelvic thrust, and this is how you have an orgasm. Is a pelvic thrust where you just, I don't know if you can we talk about this on this live? I would like to talk about.
I'm comfortable. If you're comfortable, we can talk. If anyone listening is not comfortable, then they can sign off. But I'm comfortable. Feel free.
So it's like if obviously in the South Asian community, it's always about missionary, okay? Like with a woman, she has to always be missionary. The man has to always feel dominant. So when you're in that situation, you just thrust your pelvic upwards, and then it will hit your clitoris, and you will have an orgasm. So instead of you saying to him, I want to feel an orgasm, you have to move your body. And when you move your body, you will experience that orgasm. It may take a few tries, obviously, because you can't initiate it, you have to wait. But when that does happen, you will know what that orgasm feels like. So you have to move your body as well in the rhythm. So I know I've worked with a few women in South Asian community, and I've heard the same thing as well. And I was mind blown as well. I was like, is that normal? But yeah, in their culture, that's how it is. So when you are in that situation, just move your body, and it's going to help you release. And it's going to help you have that orgasm.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, and I think it's important. You know, like you said, whether they're doing the pelvic thrust or any other activity, that women do not just, unless you want to do that and your husband's happy with that, not just see sex as an act that's done to them and they're not part of it. So that's something that, go on.
Sorry, I'm gonna, like, you got me on a roll now. You know where that comes from? Colonization. Oh my gosh. You know how much colonization has messed up our sex lives? I get so mad.
Think back, lie back and think of England.
Right.
That's where it comes from.
Exactly. It's just like, because when they came to our countries, they saw the men pleasing their women, and they go, this is not normal. And they saw men with many wives, and that this is not normal. Let's go and mess them up and tell them that it's wrong for you to please your wives and to have more than one wife. And then they brought us over, like, you know, forced us out of our own countries, brought us over here, and we were forced us to adopt their values. And their values make no sense at all. So that's the reason why so many, especially the South Asian community and the Arab community, they've adopted the Western values as if that's the right way. It's not. That's why so many people are depressed. Because number one, they're not having a great sex life. And number two, the values of the system doesn't fit their culture. So it's like you're trying to make something fit. It's like trying to put a square in a round circle. You can't do it. So yeah, I blame colonization. That's just me. And I will always blame.
No, I agree. And it's something that when I was studying in Egypt, about over 10 years ago now, and we came across, there's one particular hadith which, and it's an authentic hadith. It's in Bukhari and Muslim. And it's where a woman went to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and she was complaining that her husband wasn't able to satisfy her in the bedroom. And he referred to her husband's penis being like the fringe of a garment. Either he was too small, his penis, or he was impotent. And then the Prophet, peace be upon him, smiled, and then he wanted to know whether they consummated the marriage. But when my teacher was explaining this particular hadith, he was blushing, he was going red, he couldn't finish a sentence. And I was just thinking, what's wrong with you? Like, we're adults. But it was this idea that even though this is in our tradition, this happened during the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It was still like, oh, we can't even speak about this. So I even saw with a number of the teachers this, I wouldn't even call it a sense of piety, because there were no one nowadays is more pious or more modest than the people of the past, right? So this prudery that unfortunately exists amongst a lot of Muslims, and they use the religion to kind of make it like, I can't even say the word, I can't even mention
penis and vagina.
Yeah, you can't even mention, when these were terms like the Arabs, they had like hundreds of terms referring to both the penis and the vagina, very different terms. Even so, it's like this, and I do blame colonialism, like what you said, that we've incorporated and adopted this idea that sex is just
what it was. I used to be a Christian, and I remember the Christian faith. because the Catholics, I think, they don't believe in divorce, even if the woman is not sexually satisfied. So they brought the Christian faith over to our countries, which were predominantly Muslim, and they forced that upon our people and said to them that you have to follow this way if you want money, if you want food, if you want freedom. So then, if you read the Bible, there's a lot of connotation around a woman who wants sex as being a prostitute. So the purity culture, it's called a purity culture, where if a woman is not a virgin, then she's not considered to be any of anything of value, which comes again from the Christian faith, some of the parts that they changed. So that purity culture is what gives us that shame that, oh, especially for women who are divorced and they want to get married again, they have that shame around, oh well, I've had sex before, what man is going to want to touch me? But Khadija radiallahu anha was a widow and she was divorcee, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married so many divorcee women. So again, it's like the shame. It's like, where does it come from? Colonization. I'm gonna keep blaming it to the end of the world. To the end of the world, I'm gonna keep blaming it.
No, you're definitely right. I agree 100% on that. And even with the Protestants, the Victorians, they had this puritanical mindset as well, that when they colonized much of the Muslim, the African, Arab world, we took this understanding, even the language you use, when a lot of people, when we speak about sex, it's dirty, it's nasty, it's like these negative connotations. Or like if a woman had been married before, had sex before, she's sold, or she's, all of these things that are not from Islam. Like you said, the Prophet ﷺ, all of his wives apart from one had been married before. So they didn't have this idea that a woman who has been, like this, and it's problematic. And that's why I think it's important that even when we hear these, we're challenging them. Because people, both men and women, we can't act like we haven't absorbed some of these ideas. And even when we're speaking about, like in Christianity, you've got the things, the 7 deadly sins, and lust being one of them. Now, this idea that lust is bad, but love is pure and holy and good. In the Islamic tradition, you don't really have, like, lust, obviously, it can be good if it's exercised in the right medium.
Yeah.
So if it's exercised in the wrong medium, then it's not good. But this idea that lust in and of itself is inherently bad and it's evil, this is not something from the Islamic tradition. Now, I know in other religious traditions, like you mentioned, like with Catholicism, I know they didn't believe in divorce, and also I don't know if it's changed, but traditionally it was like this idea that they didn't believe in the contraception, like condoms and things like that.
Yeah, that's true.
When that's not the case in Islamic tradition, where there's practices where you can like withdraw, correct, and withdraw. So this again, so I think a lot of unlearning, re-education needs to be done. Even what we understand to be shameful, modest, appropriate, inappropriate. There's definitely a lot of go on.
Also, another thing, like, guys, we talk about the sunnah. It was also a sunnah to talk about this. This is a sunnah. This is what the Sahabas and the Sahabiyas were not afraid to talk about this. Even periods, menstruation, they talked about it. It wasn't hidden. I think the Jews said that the Prophet's religion is a religion of where they teach you how to wipe your bum. I don't know if that's a hadith. But think about it. That's how, it's a structure, it's a way of life. Like, how can you negate sex? Because sex is what brought you here. You're here because of sex. So how can you negate that whole concept and completely shame it? You have to ask yourself, where does that come from? Because it doesn't come from the religion. Definitely doesn't come from the religion.
Yeah. No, and also I think even as Muslims, people need to understand, obviously we're not a monolith, and there's, even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, people that were more conservative than others. Now, not everyone is going to be comfortable to speak about sex and intimacy, and it's fine, and it's not, and that's why even when to be honest, I don't really like speaking to too many Muslims, just because openly, just because you get boxed in, people then will start asking you all of these questions about, is this halal, is this haram, blah, and it's just like, just live your life. A lot of stuff you know the answer to already, but it's like, you want me to, so that's why, and the early community, they lived their life as human beings who obviously committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they had their failings like anyone else and everyone else, whereas now with a lot of conservative or practicing, everyone wants to come to robots, which is just,
it's like, even when I promoted our live, I got so many messages from people, it's haram. I got so many hadiths and fatwa sent to me, and my sister, I understand it triggers you, but it doesn't trigger me to talk about it. That Allah speaks the truth, and we are people of the truth, and that's it. This is part of our truth, text. But people can't understand that, and I understand it everyone has religious trauma as well. So many people carry religious trauma that they can't even understand the concept of sex, that is so shameful for them. So I would always advise people that if you're coming from that stance, look within, like, ask yourself, where's it really coming from? Because it's not coming from the religion. It really isn't. Religion promotes healthy communication. That's what it promotes. And if you can't have healthy communication with people, then it's coming from yourself. It's coming from a deep wound within.
Mm. And you just even to add to that, what I find troubling is that many of these warriors, shall we call them, they will campaign so much about, you know, they're speaking on behalf of Allah and His Messenger. We need to behave like this, behave like that. But when it's topics like sexual abuse that happens in the community, whether it's genital mutilation that happens in some Muslim countries, all of a sudden they're silent.
Silence. Don't talk about shit.
Like, we don't need to, because we need to preserve the honor, which is not the Islamic concept, is our culture or family honor. So it's like people pick and choose when they want to speak up, they want to be brave. So that's why I always tell people, like, even like yourself, if you're comfortable in certain topics and you can speak about it, but don't wait for the validation or approval of everyone, because not everyone is going to be comfortable with it. And that's just the reality. But I think with some Muslims and that even some human beings, it's like you're seeking the validation of everyone, and then you can feel comfortable that, okay, now I can speak about this or do X, Y, and Z, when you're never going to be able to approve everyone. So I kind of think we went off on a bit of a tangent. I want to get back to, but I think that's really important. Let me just go back to if there's any more questions before I go to mine.
I'm trying to scroll up as well.
Or if you see any other interesting questions.
Yeah, this is something that the Muslim youth need. Exactly. Nobody talks.
So what does Daisy mean?
Oh, like the South Asian community, Daisy.
I did know that, by the way, but I just wanted to kind of ask because someone asked the question. Okay. Yes, I'll be saving this live. Someone asked for your prices.
Oh, okay, we're gonna have to discuss that on the phone. So I don't like to share my prices, but it's in the four figure mark. So yeah, that's my price. Yeah. So if you wanna find out if I can help you, like, just book a call with me. Send me a DM.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you don't talk and teach education. Okay. Okay, let me go back to my questions. I think you mentioned this, but I think you touched on this, but what are your thoughts? I just want to hear some of your thoughts about women who use sex as a weapon against the husband, and maybe deprive the husband from. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, number one, you're actually increasing the conflict between you and your husband, and that's only going to make matters worse within your marriage. So if you're looking to heal your marriage, have an amazing, mind-blowing, orgasmic, pleasure, fulfilling marriage, don't use sex as a weapon, because culturally, that's what you've been taught culturally. I remember my best friend, she's amazing, and she's Somali, and she tells me, Rosie, don't give your husband sex. I was like, what? How, why not, why? And she was like, listen, you're going to make the man a beast. If you're going to have too much sex with you, he's going to become a beast. I'm just like, what? I was like, he is a beast though. You have to tame him through sex. So she was telling me, that's a Somali culture. A lot of women don't. They just don't. I don't know if it's all Somalis, but it's just some of them. I know she's tribal, so she has a very, very cultural mindset. So she was like, no, I don't give it to him. It's only once a month or once a year. That's how they mind it. And it's only when I want to get pregnant. So if you want to get pregnant, just like to have the sex then, and then that's it. So when I heard that, I was just like, why? Because Allah says it's a form of, first of all, it's a form of charity. So why wouldn't you want to get those good deeds? And secondly, Allah tells the man to go to his God and, like, ladies, I want you to realize that you are the one benefiting, not the man. When the man releases the sperm, he wants to fall asleep. He's tired. When you experience orgasm, you have energy. You have that motivation. It releases the stress. You want to go and do things. It actually gets you moving. So why would you deprive yourself of that? It's free. Number one, it's free. You don't have to take no pills, right? Once you have that orgasm, you don't need to take no pills. You don't need to go to the doctor. You don't have to go to the gym and, work it out there. You can just get it from your husband, someone you love, someone you have a deep connection with, right? So don't use sex as a weapon, because you're fooling yourself. And I promise, and as a woman to woman, that you are fooling yourself. You know that when you're horny and you want sex, but you tell yourself, no, I'm not going to give it to him, you know for a fact you're only fooling yourself. You know that. And what happens? you end up thinking, oh, he's going to get it from outside. He's going to be looking at another woman, feeling attracted to her, and then he's going to want to come to me and have sex. That's what goes on in your mind, because you're stopping yourself from having that connection with him. And ladies, it's not just about sex. It's the intimacy. Like, sex only lasts for like 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. But it's the foreplay before it. It's like you get to know each other. You are naked with each other. Your souls are connected. So you're really depriving yourself from that very like precious moment. And it's something that can heal you on so many levels. And I always talk about sexual healing. Women can heal from traumas through having sex with their husband. They can heal so many traumas if you just allow it.
Wow. I mean, because I actually did a webinar, which yesterday, for men only. And after the webinar, it was really good turnout. After the webinar, someone sent me a really long message, a Somali brother, and he did speak about how he was complaining about how can he have more sex with his wife, or what advice could I give, because he said that she deprives him of it and gives it to him like once a year, or when they, like what you said, only when they want to get pregnant, or when she wants to get pregnant. And I didn't understand it, and I was like, is your relationship good? And she said, yeah, it's fine and everything, but she just feels that only when he deserves it, which is maybe like on Eid, she said. That's what he said. So that's when she'll give it up. And I was just like, wow. And that's like, the woman that gave you that advice. I mean, I think, I don't see how that advice is helpful to women themselves. Like this idea that you're giving it to him like once a year. I mean, if again, she's not enjoying the relations, and I think that's different. But if it's a case of I'm just depriving of him because I don't want to make him a beast, I don't know how that can be a healthy relationship. And one of the problems is,
in their minds, they think that a man is, when a man is having sex, is like he's going to his carnal desires, and then they think in their minds, because he's becoming carnal, he's gonna start wanting more from them, and he's gonna want more sex from them, and he's gonna become out of hand. So the way we tame the man is to just not have sex with him. That's how they tame. That's how they believe that they're taming the man.
And the reason why I think that's very problematic is because you want to preserve, the honor and the reputation of the family. You don't want to speak about these things outside. When there are if that leads to really big conflicts, and for example, it's very difficult to say that's a reason for the conflict, especially with outsiders. And that's why he was really pressured, because he was like, how can I say, even if I was going to say to my in-laws or what have you, that we're having issues, and he's on the realm of thinking about having a divorce, but he doesn't want to explain that's the reason, because everything else he said is fine. But she just got this belief that she should deprive him of sex and only give it to him when she feels like it. And, so that's, but also on the other side, so I don't want to make it out like I'm just having a go at women. What about men? Because I've watched a really interesting podcast. I've heard a number of women complain about this, about the lack of emotional intimacy, and men not thinking that's important because they're providing for them financially, and they've gave them good clothing and good food. And one brother I was listening to, he said that if I'm doing everything that the religion is commanding me to do by giving you a house, shelter, clothing, food, treating you like a princess, why do I need to give you emotional intimacy? So can you talk about that and the fact and the importance of, or why, if you think emotional intimacy is important, and how men can be to learn more about emotional intimacy and connect with their wives?
So a woman, like we know, men are very visual and women are very emotional. So if you want to turn a woman on, tap into her emotional faculties first. You have to do foreplay with her. You have to touch her. You have to learn what turns her on. So whether it's words, whether it's touch, whether it's, other forms of communication. A lot of women, when we are not emotionally open, the sex will be very painful. Like there's this whole hype around having a tight vagina, but it's only tight because a woman is not feeling it. She don't want it, right? So I would say to the men, it's like, okay, you're providing for your wife, you're treating her like a princess. Wouldn't you want more of that? Wouldn't you just want to build a relationship so much so that it's so fulfilling, so nice, so happy, so amazing, and the way that you do that is by emotionally talking to her, tapping into her emotional faculties. And it doesn't take long for, like, it depends actually. For a woman, if she's been cooking all day and she's been like around the kids, it might take an hour, or maybe an hour and a half, and for you to start, you know, building her up to the moment, right? It's not just like a straight 1, 2, 3 thing. You have to build her up to the moment. You have to touch her. You have to play with her. Like if she's cooking, play with her for a bit, talk to her, let her know that she's beautiful. Lead up to it. This is what the Prophet ﷺ said. He goes, send her love notes before you have sex with her. Like, don't just like have sex with her. Don't be a beast. Don't just like penetrate her and then leave her. Like, build up to it. Build the tension. You have to build the tension with a woman. When you build that tension, I promise you, she's going to be so appreciative. She's going to be so grateful that she's going to like, her energy is going to change. She's going to want to give you more of herself. So wouldn't you want that? That's my question. Like, wouldn't you want her to be giving more of herself to you? Wouldn't you want that in a relationship? And if you do, then just do things for her. Like, just, you know, touch her, hug her, kiss her, let her know that she's beautiful, constantly connect to her emotionally. And I promise you, your relationship will change.
And do you think it's important, I think I know the answer, but I still want to ask you anyway, to have spaces where women can learn about sex, intimacy, their own bodies? And why
actually,
so?
I'm doing a course. I'm so glad that you brought this up. I'm actually doing a course about how to please your husband. It's only exclusively for women. But I feel like there's a massive gap in the market right now where women just don't know how to please their husband, whether it's oral sex, whether it's, you know, foreplay, whether it's, you know, getting to know what turns their husband on. They just don't know because they weren't taught it, because it wasn't, we don't really speak about it, right? At all. It's like shamed. So I'm actually building a course right now where I teach women how to like please their husbands if they're in a healthy marriage and they just want to, you know, add more spice to the marriage, add more flavor to the marriage. Then this course will help you like just really build that relationship, build that intimacy. But I do believe it's important. It's very important, like ladies, like men and women, for you guys to understand your partner. I feel like understanding or even comprehension is more important than communication, because you can communicate. But if I don't understand you, then there's no point communicating, right? So comprehension is so important. Because I know with my husband, I clash with him sometimes because he's saying one thing to me in his love language, and I'm saying one thing to him in my love language, and there's a clash. But the thing is that we're both saying the same thing, but we're just not comprehending each other. So learning your husband's love language, learning what turns him on is so important in the marriage, because that's what's going to build the intimacy. That's what's going to build the trust. That's what's going to build the bond between you two. So yeah, I believe that's very important.
I agree with that, and I love the differentiating between communication and comprehension. Because like you said, you can communicate, but if it's not comprehensive and it's not effective, then it's going to fall on deaf ears. And just to add to that, the importance of compatibility as well. And that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and to understand that maybe that's something that maybe you want to kind of understand prior to going into, especially if you're not married, prior to going to marriage, because not everyone is compatible with each other. Just because you're both from a similar background or similar mindset or similar religious values or what have you, doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be compatible intimately. So I think that's something that I think people need to, and I think as well, like you were saying earlier about empowering women themselves, that taking ownership of your sexuality and sensuality. And if you're uncomfortable asking the questions directly, but maybe ask indirectly to kind of understand where your potential husband or your current husband's mindset is in terms of certain relations. Because if he's very, I don't want to say stuck in the dark ages, because people of the dark ages, some of them are more progressive than us. But if he's very like, if you're not compatible with him, shall we say, like he looks at sex as very linear. It's all about his pleasure. It's all about him doing his work and just the woman lying back and thinking of England. If that's not what you want, it's important to kind of try and understand how he views sex and intimacy, and even so-called controversial topics like oral sex as well, because if he's not able to get off from from intercourse, maybe he needs to have other things in his other things in his arsenal to kind of help her.
Right, and also, ladies, remember, right? This is not. I think a lot of us women think, oh, I don't want to please the man. I don't want to please him. I think this misconception needs to be like debunked. You're not pleasing a man. You're pleasing yourself. I don't think women realize that when you are pleasing your husband and you've seen him having a great time, it literally turns you on. There's like no shadow of a doubt it will turn you on. But because we have this in our mind, obviously from colonialism, from all this other stuff, culture, we tell ourselves, I don't want to please the man. Like, nah, I don't want him to think that I'm too eager to please him. If you're eager to, because I know like a lot of us women don't like hearing about the Hurl aim, the ayah about the Hurl aim, but they're there to please a husband. This is what makes them, you know, the best mates, right? And we don't know if it'll be us or if it'll be the Hurl aim in Jannah, but just having that mentality that if I please my husband, and of course, if it's a healthy relationship, I'm not talking about a relationship where it's abusive. It has to be a healthy relationship where you have a common ground. If you want to add that spice there, then pleasing your husband is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. It's going to work in your favor. Like everything that you do will always work in your favor, especially when it comes to just making your husband happy in that way in the bedroom. Making him happy in the bedroom is going to satisfy him. It's going to make his belly full. So he's not going to be looking at other women when he's out. He's going to be thinking about you. And don't you want that as a woman? I know every woman wants that. She wants her husband to be constantly thinking about her. So when you're pleasing him in the bedroom, he's going to be thinking about you when he's not with you.
Yeah, and I think the same for men as well, because I think with some with non-Muslims and Muslims as well, but just generally speaking for men, so don't get at me because I'm going to speak about generally speaking, not just Muslim men. So even like the idea that like a number of men that I know are happy to engage in, are happy to receive oral sex, but they won't give it unless it's with the special one or she deserves it. And this is the whole idea that I can't be doing an act that's solely for her pleasure, which is crazy, which I don't understand. Because they look at the intercourse is for me, so I can sleep with her, that's fine. But if it's oral sex, she has to give it to me, I have to receive it. If I'm going to give it to her, I need to receive it as well, or it has to be on my terms, which is kind of crazy because I think some men have this idea that I can't be there just to kind of pleasure a woman and I'm not getting anything in return.
It's a form of control, right? It always goes back to control. You know, it always goes back to the ego. Like you're always trying to gain that control, and you think that's your power. But at the end of the day, if you just give that power up in the bedroom where you're intimate, you give that power up. There's gonna be such a balance in the relationship.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder: are people having sex for their friends, or are they having it for themselves?
Right.
Because some people got this idea that I can't do X, Y, and Z because what my friends will think of me and society. I'm not thinking. Exactly. Who are you thinking about when you're in the bedroom? So that's something that I think a lot of people kind of have issues with. Sorry, maybe.
It's so true. What is going on?
Yeah. Because a lot of people, they go into the bedroom thinking about what other people think.
Yeah.
And what other people are going to say. Like, I can't do this, I can't do that. Or they have certain relations in the bedroom, but they won't, not necessarily I'm saying you have to go out and say, I did this, I did that. I'm not saying that. But this idea, they wouldn't acknowledge, like oral sex is one in particular that, especially growing up, I'm probably showing my age, but there was a time culturally in the West where it wasn't seen as, it wasn't normalized. It wasn't seen as something.
I remember we called it up north. Up north, we called the men the muff divers. You're a muff diver. It was seen as,
so we
had a bad thing.
Right, exactly. And it was seen as a man, it's not something that's befitting of a man. A woman, yes, of course, she does it, and it's just. And then you've got on the other end, unfortunately, that a number of women, because they're very conscious of how their genitalia looks, they don't allow a man to go down on them because, you know, they're not able to open up. So that's something that, and that plays into this idea of, you know, the so-called perfect designer vagina and pressure that a lot of women are under because of maybe porn or what they've seen, that their labia needs to look a certain way. And that's why a lot of education needs to be done. So people need to understand that the labia comes in different shapes, sizes. There's no such thing as a perfect vagina, so to speak. And there's something that, because I watched a recent documentary, which was really interesting. What's called it? Orgasm Inc. For anyone who's interested, and they were exploring or they were exposing the pharmaceutical industry, particularly in the United States, where this was like from the early 2000s, after like the Viagra was discovered, or just before Viagra was discovered. And what they did is they intentionally misdiagnosed healthy women as if they've got a sexual dysfunction. So female sexual dysfunction became the big thing, and it was on Oprah and all of these, and they kept on pushing out these statistics that, you know, 43% of women have got a sexual dysfunction, and the whole idea is like make women feel they've got a problem or they've got an issue or disorder, and then you can sell them like a pill. Then you can sell them a treatment, and that's something that even with a lot of these, and I like the language that you use, a lot of the problems or challenges that women use is not really a problem itself. It's maybe something that they're not aware of that need to kind of overcome. So I think even when we're looking at, you know, especially women who've got this perfectionist mindset, and feel that they're broken or they're not enough. A lot of times it's not that they have a problem itself, it's just maybe their understanding towards this problem is something that kind of needs to be
Right, and
rewired.
you have to also realize as women, because I used to be a model, and
Yeah.
like guys, you're all airbrushed. Like the stuff on the magazine is not real. The women don't look like that. They're just used as a prop. That's it. A model is used as a prop. That's it. They always filter her. They always change her. They always Photoshop her. So if you're comparing yourself to a picture, just know it's not real. Even like there's women, I know a lot of women who are addicted to porn. I know a lot of women who are addicted to porn, and it all comes back to like as children they were exposed to it, and they got that adrenaline rush from it. So they're always seeking that high. It's like when you're on drugs and you seek the first high. It's the same with porn. So a lot of women who are addicted to porn, then they start thinking, okay, I don't look like that. I don't look like that way. So I can't have sex with my husband. It's just not possible. So you have to always dig deeper within yourself and find where this is coming from. Just like you mentioned, the perfectionism, it comes from that deep-rooted belief that you're just not good enough.
And why is it, maybe also you probably can answer this and understand this experience more than I could, that a number of women, again, not all, but a number of women look at like models or beautiful women to kind of, are they looking at these women to validate themselves in terms of this is the benchmark I need to reach? Or like,
Yeah.
what is the fascination with?
The fascination is that men like this, so I need to look like this. Because at the end of the day, as if you don't want to admit it, it's cool. But you're not on, if you're posting pictures about yourself, I'm not saying every single woman, but some women post it to get the validation from men. You do it to get the attention from men because you have a father wound. Maybe you didn't have a prominent father figure in your life. Maybe he didn't give you that emotional connection. But when a man likes your picture or he comments on you, he sends you a DM, you're subconsciously getting the attention that you wanted from your dad. And I've spoken to so many women. I've done tons of therapy sessions with these women, and that's always the case. So when you are looking at other women, you are subconsciously thinking, okay, she looks like that. She's getting attention. If I look that way, I'm going to get the same attention. And it all goes back to that father wound. Okay. And you can deny it because so many women are like, no, I post it for myself. But ladies, I get dressed up nice at home. I wear makeup. I look really like nice for my husband, and I don't share it on social media. I don't feel the need to. I don't need that validation because I worked on that father wound before. When I was modeling, when I wasn't like a Muslim, I was constantly looking for male validation. It's called the internalized male gaze. We all as women have an internalized male gaze. We look at ourselves through the lens of a man. So if I don't have a big butt, and I don't have big boobs, and I don't have a small waist, and my skin isn't white, and my hair isn't blonde or blue-eyed, then I'm not attractive, according to a man, right? Because we all have that internalized male gaze. We look at the world through a male's perspective. So when you heal that father wound and you realize something I call reparenting. So everyone can do this. All you have to do is check in with yourself and ask yourself, what do you need right now? Like, really imagine you're talking to a little girl and she's you, and you just ask yourself, what do you need right now? Like, I've got your back. I'll give it to you. And you hear something within you. Usually it's like, I need some attention. I want to go out. I want to go eat something. I just want to take a break. That's really what you're seeking. But because you're ignoring that voice within, that's why you go externally for the male validation, the male attention.
And with your work with the reprogramming or retraining, is it, and to heal from like the father wound, is it to help women love themselves or to then seek the validation from like their husband? What is it?
No, so basically you become your own cheerleader. That's what I like to say. Okay. So even then you don't seek validation from your husband, and it's the most freeing experience because usually what we're doing, we're either seeking validation from a man, a stranger, or we're seeking validation from our husband. And if they don't give it to us, we get mad. We get depressed, we get anxiety. We think, oh my God, I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me? So when you start becoming your own cheerleader and you give yourself what you are looking for from other men and your husband, you no longer, it's like the dynamic within you changes, your energy changes. You're like, I'm so confident now. I don't need my husband to tell me I'm beautiful. I know I'm beautiful, but if he tells me I'm beautiful, it's good. It's amazing. But I'm not going to seek it. And my life isn't going to be ruined if my husband doesn't compliment me. Or if my husband looks at another woman and I catch him, it's not the end of my world because I know I'm beautiful. I don't need him to validate me. I don't need him to always tell me that I'm pretty or I'm beautiful or that he loves me. I love myself. So when you have that high self-esteem, no man, no person can come to you and bring you down. And it's all about reinstalling that cheerleader within. So you tell yourself every single day, I'm good enough. I'm beautiful, I'm sexy. You know, what I like to do is I look in the mirror and I just say things that I imagine my husband would say to me. And I just constantly give myself that attention. And the more you do that, it just raises your self-esteem. It raises that standard within you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That sounds what you said sounds very much like what what's her name? I think what's her name? Esther Perel. She was talking about like the nature of women's desire and how the importance of women. She said that female desire is very narcissistic in the sense that woman
Yes,
needs to desire herself in order to really experience and fulfill her desire. And that was something that a number of men could understand. And even some women that rather than looking outside, if you kind of feel that you are lovable, then you're able to kind of give love and express love. She was just talking about
right.
that women feel whole like within themselves. So that's really, I think a lot of like maybe courses need to be done on this because this is like part of the human psychology.
I
That
know.
I think
Right.
people maybe of the past understood without it being formalized.
Mm.
Whereas I think maybe because of the pressure and what the mixed messaging we're receiving from the media and things like that, a lot of people need these as formal courses to kind of
Yeah.
understand because this is stuff that was taught in the ancients. And a lot of when I'm trying to give like webinars and stuff, I always try and tell people that a lot of what people are saying that is kind of so-called revolutionary, it's not actually revolutionary. It's actually was said hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. The only thing that we've done is that we've kind of maybe codified it and maybe made it or written or explained it in a way that's accessible to the modern day reader. But a lot of like what people have been taught or mistaught or misinformed, like whether it's in the form of Hollywood movies, porn, is false information. So a lot of like the whole new kind of revolutionary sex education or intimacy education that people are getting, a lot of it is going back to ancient sources. And even like with the whole craze on what's it called, like mindfulness and the importance of women being mindful and present when they're engaging in any form of sexual activity, so they can enjoy the
Yeah.
pleasure that their body is experiencing and not having this mind-body disconnect. This was taught thousands of years ago. But
Right.
again, it's just something that, especially again as whether you're Muslim or person of color, a lot of our ancient traditions have been teaching this in different ways, but for whatever reason, we've kind of discarded it and considered it to be backwards and looked at
Right.
the West to give us,
Oh.
and then they just repackage it and tell it and send it and
Right.
sell it the same stuff. So I just find it hilarious when everyone is, especially like, Muslims or people of color looking to the West for validation when they are selling you the same thing that your
Exactly.
ancestors
Just repackage it.
yeah, repackaging and marketing. But marketing is very important because at the end of the day, if someone
Yeah.
doesn't feel that this looks good or it can benefit me, they're not going to take it in. So I'm just going to see if there's any more questions before we kind of wrap up. I think it's been quite a very
This was
good.
such an amazing discussion.
I don't want to give too much away because a lot of what we've kind of said, normally I would charge for this.
I know, right?
How do you build emotional intimacy and feel connected? That's a good question.
Oh, that's a very good question. So with your husband, is it a woman asking for a husband or either way? Okay.
Either way, yeah.
Like I mentioned, it's about communication, healthy communication, and comprehending each other. So I would say, like, learning what your husband likes. Like, one thing I learned during my marriage is learning what my husband likes in the bedroom, what's his fantasies, what turns him on. Learning those processes are very important to build that connection deeper. Another thing is, just like I mentioned, validating yourself. Ladies, if you validate yourself, I promise you, your relationship will change, your energy will change. Your husband will be like, are you like, you look so different, you feel so different because you're validating yourself. You don't need your husband to come to you and tell you every single day that you're beautiful. You're telling yourself. And when you have that within you, you have that confidence that changes the dynamic in your relationship. That's two things I would say.
Lovely. And I think the final, maybe two more questions. Just trying to pick a really good one. Do you have any books you would recommend?
Obviously, Kunyaza, come on. I remember reading I read my husband bought Kunyaza for me. I read it in a day. I could not put it down. SubhanAllah, that book, I was crying at the end of it. Like, oh my God, Allahu Akbar. I made so much dua. I was like, Alhamdulillah, there's a man out here who is teaching women that it's okay to have an orgasm. And he's teaching women how to have one and teaching men how to give it to them. I was mind blown because I've been talking about this for so long, but not as not like you do, because I know this is your niche, this is your market. But I've been talking about this like behind closed doors with my clients, and I always talk about ladies, get your orgasm. Like, it's your drug. Just get it. Get your orgasm. If you have to have like a 5 minute, if it lasts 5-10 minutes, just make sure you have your orgasm, because it's so important for a woman. So when I came across your book, I was like, that's it, sealed. The deal has been sealed. That's all we need now. We don't need anything else. So I would definitely recommend Kunyaza by Habib. He promotes it on his IG. And the books they recommend about seeking validation from men, there's a book called, it's escaped my mind. It's a blue, She Comes First. She Comes First by Brian Nixon. And that
which one? Is that the one about oral sex?
No, that one's a very good book. So if you want to learn about sex,
okay. I'm sorry, because that's the same title, because She Comes First was by Ian Kerner, about oral sex. Sorry, go on. Brian Nixon.
But she was talking about validation from men. So She Comes First by Brian Nixon. It's a blue and pink book with a circle on it with like the female, you know, that sign that they use. That's a very good book about raising your standard.
Right. And what about the book you mentioned about the love languages?
Yes, it's not a book. If you type in 5 love languages in Google, it will come up with a test, and you just take the test, and you will find out your love language.
Cool. Is there any other books, maybe or videos or podcasts that you'd recommend for people to listen in, check in on?
About intimacy and sex.
Intimacy and sex. Actually, I think you spoke about it a little bit before, but just for the benefit of those maybe that's joined a bit late. Is there any difference between sex and intimacy? And if so, what are the differences?
So sex is obviously penetrative sex. Intimacy is like building a connection before you have sex. Right. So that all comes back to validation. So it all comes back to a mindset thing. Intimacy is all about mindset. Sex is about obviously how you pleasure your husband and your wife, the tools that you use, the gestures that you use. But when it comes to intimacy, the books I would recommend is She Comes First. So you learn about validating yourself. There's another one called I Am Enough by Marissa Peer. That's a very good book as well. And then if you want to learn more about how to, deepen the pleasure in the bedroom, Kunyaza, 100%.
And my recommendations for women, I would recommend, and this is a really good book, whether you're married or not married, to learn about self-love and having an emotional connection with yourself. Passage by Angelica Lindsay Ali. So Passage, a 31-day guided tour with the village auntie. I recommend that. And even for men as well, it's actually insightful, understanding the woman's perspective as well. What else would I recommend? For men, She Comes First by Ian Kerner is a really good book. But I think, just wrapping up, can you just give us a last elevated pitch in terms of what you've got coming up, where people can find you, just so we can end there, if you don't mind? Yeah.
So basically, my 6-month group mastermind, Sacred Sensual Success, is for female entrepreneurs who want to live a life that turns them on. So we'll be healing from deep ancestral traumas, deep childhood wounds around abandonment, betrayal, guilt, shame, and we'll also be working on your marketing so you can attract premium clients into your business. So this is mainly for entrepreneurs who have an online service. So if you're not attracting the clients that you want, it's usually number one because you're not living a life that turns you on, you're feeling unfulfilled, you're not in a great shape, your money is all over the place, and your connection with God is all over the place as well. So in the 6-month mastermind, we heal those areas, your sexual pleasure areas. We help you tap into your orgasmic energy. I help you balance your feminine and your masculine energy, so that you can have more abundance, more love, more happiness, more joy, and make tons of money. So if you want to know more information, send me a DM and I will send you the link to apply.
MashaAllah, barakallah, thank you again for gracing us with your presence and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. We definitely will have to catch up soon, but just want to wish you hopefully a blessed Ramadan in advance, and hopefully your family as well. And thank you again, and I think we'll end it there. I'll try and save this. Hopefully, I'm going to try and save this. I'm going to be very careful.
Save.
I'm going to save it now, but thank you. And thanks everyone for joining. Assalamu alaikum.
Take care. Wa alaikum assalam.